This is all Charles Barkley's fault somehow.
It's terrible.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of the PHNX Suns podcast. I'm Lindsay. That's Gerald. That's Espo. And today, the show is all about Bradley Beal. That's right. We're going to talk about Nacho's favorite player, Bradley Beal. Welcome in, everyone. Thanks for being here early with us in the chat. Nathan, Ashley, Steven, Leo, Enslow, David, we appreciate you. Amelia, for joining us early and often in the chat. Let us know what you think about the conversations happening in today's show. First and foremost, we're going to talk about why Bradley Beal should not come off the bench and continue to start for the Phoenix Suns. Gerald, you wrote an article about this over at gophnx.com. So if you'd like to read that after, I highly recommend. And then later, we'll talk about why Bradley Beal should come off the bench for the Phoenix Suns. And then we'll collectively decide one way or the other what camp we're in.
Sounds fun.
You ready?
Yeah, sounds great.
Let's go. Why Bradley Beal should not come off the bench and continue to start for the Phoenix Suns. Gerald, you want to tip us off with your number one reason?
Yeah, well, I mean, aside from the fact that it's just not happening because he's going to make $50 million this year and they brought him in to be part of their big three and not be a sixth man, you don't put your third best player on the bench. The whole idea of getting a big three is to play them together. The numbers bear out the fact that the big three was better together. And it just doesn't make sense to try and convince a guy like that to take a bench role. It doesn't make you better because when you look at it, Bradley Beal is still decisively a better player than Grayson Allen. You're not getting any taller by putting Grayson in the starting lineup over Bradley Beal. And if you put Royce O'Neal in there over both Bradley Beal and Grayson Allen, guess how are you going to get both of those guys minutes off the bench? How are you going to deal with the fact that now your best two defensive wings are starting, or at least among the proven players? It just doesn't make sense. If the idea is to empower Bradley Beal in a six-man role or in a role with predominantly bench guys so that he is empowered and not the third option behind KD and Book, you can still stagger his minutes. You don't have to take him out of the game and bring him off the bench in order to do that. And if anything, we need to bear in mind that that's probably the plan. Probably take Bradley Beal out around 6-7 minutes in, put him back in at the start of the second quarter and let him cook a little bit more with either KD or Book out there, depending on how you stagger those minutes. So you don't have to bring Bradley Beal off the bench in order to have a more balanced rotation. You just have to stagger the big three in a way that we couldn't really do as often last year because of availability.
But we did still see it at times last year. Bradley Beal did play with more of the guys off of the bench than not at times last season. You can add to that this year if you'd like to, but it's not like he only played with the starters and only those other four guys throughout the season.
Right.
Well, but to me, what is it about the numbers? I read the article. I think I get where you're coming from. But what is it about the numbers specifically that makes you feel so confident that this is the 100% way to go by starting them?
Well, because if we look at the on-off numbers for the big three here, it shows that with Book on, KD on, Beal on, they were a plus 123 in 790 minutes together. With Book on, KD on, Beal off, drops to plus 74 in 670 minutes. Book off, KD on, Beal on, it's only a plus 37 in 285 minutes. Book on, Beal on, KD off, it's only a plus 25 in 125 minutes. The best concoction of the Suns is when you have your three best players on the court, which should not be a surprise if you think about it, really. It makes the most sense that if you want to start off games well, if you want to close halves, second quarter, fourth quarter well, you want your best players on the court at the same time. And I know there's been concern about Bradley Beal's role and the different roles that he had to take on last year, but this season is going to be different because that's why you went out and got these 2 point guards so that you don't have to have Bradley Beal running the point off the bench with the second unit. You can just empower him to play in a role similar to he did in Washington with a point guard that he played with in Washington and Tyus Jones. And you can capitalize on him in ways that maybe you didn't last year because you were trying to pigeonhole him into a lot of different other roles.
But these plus minus numbers were with the lineup that Booker or Beal was the point guard and the other one was the shooting guard. My biggest concern here is when you look at it, how much are you hurt by now having Tyus at the point guard, Beal at the shooting guard, Booker as a small forward, because it changes the dynamic of what the what you're referring to in these numbers. If we were talking straight, they're running it back 100%. I agree that lineup is the one that makes the most sense. But are you confident enough that that's going to pan out the way it did with those 3 when you're shifting 2 of them down a position, and then playing a point guard there?
My question to you then would be, what is the better alternative? Like we talked about, if you go out and get a traditional point guard who's probably going to be undersized, you're going to have to deal with this issue. We knew that going in. They went out and did it. Now we're dealing with the issue. My thing is, if you are subbing in Grayson Allen for Bradley Beal, you are putting in a worse version of a player at the same height and position as Bradley Beal. So that fixes nothing. And if you put in Royce O'Neal, again, can we truly say that we think Ryan Dunn is definitely going to be a proven part of the rotation, that your wing depth isn't totally scratched off the surface if you're starting Royce? And again, Royce is only like 6'6", so it's not like we're getting that much bigger either. I know that he guards up a position, but I don't think Royce is the answer there either. You're getting significantly worse. You're creating more problems to deal with a problem that, you know what, if we just put our 3 best players out there and put a point guard out there to feed them the ball, that's still the best way to go, rather than putting a worse player in and pissing off one of your 3 best guys by trying to talk him into a super sub role.
I would be curious to know, you brought up those on-off numbers, and we can pull them up again if we want here. When you look at the drop-off between when all 3 of them are on versus when just Beal is off, but Book and Katie are on, do you think that could rise this season if you also have Tyus on in replace of Beal in that role or in that slot? How much? That's the question. I know we're all have to guessing here because you don't know until you get to see it. Right. But I would be curious to know what you think about replacing Beal in that on, how much you think it kind of like shifts. Is it a drastic enough shift to stay away from it entirely, or do you think it could be close enough to at least give it a shot?
No, I think the numbers should still be fine, but that's not really what's at issue for me. Because I feel like if you take Beal out 6 or 7 minutes in, you're still probably going to have Tyus and Book and KD on the floor without him. And you want those numbers to be good. Like it does simplify things in terms of, all right, we went from having 3 possible guys that we could get the rock to 2. So I think that those numbers will still look good. But you're still going to be starting Tyus next. Like Tyus is still going to play minutes with Book and KD, whether Beal is starting or not, because I think Beal's going to be one of the first guys out so that you can have him kind of be one of your designated scorers to start second and fourth quarters so that the fourth quarters aren't as atrocious as what we saw last year. So for me, it's all about, okay, how are you going to stagger this? And if you are taking Beal out of the equation, who are you starting in his place? Because it won't be Tyus that's taking Beal's spot.
No,
it'll be
Grayson
or Royce.
Yeah.
I was told to wait till second segment to present that argument to you, so I will.
Sure.
You can do it.
Well, look, it's not.
We'll just wing it.
Look, it's not Royce to me.
Okay.
It's not Grayson to me.
Okay.
I think you start the season with what you're arguing, but I think if Ryan Dunn develops, and you hope he does, he becomes the defensive guy that you put in there as a sizable wing that has some of the ability to cut on offense. If he's playing at that level, it means he's shooting the three-pointer well enough. I think that's where you look at that point, do I move Bradley Beal to that super 6-man role at that point? because right now I think you're right. Putting Grayson in there doesn't change your fate. It's the same thing, just swapping deck chairs there, But and Royce, inconsistent, and is it enough of an upgrade? Sure, you gain a little bit more size. Maybe there's a little bit more focus on defense and rebounding, but you lose a lot, offensively, and you don't gain enough defensively in that. To me, that's when you're going to have to consider it. And and there's some other reasons which we can get into, but in that particular point, I think that's the only way that you eventually get there, or you trade for a wing that's defensive minded with an okay offensive.
I came up with that solution too, and Gerald was mad at me for it.
Well, I wasn't mad at you.
Because I didn't have an answer to who
my
that
follow-up
person
question was, who are you trading for?
Yeah,
and she was like,
my solution to this whole problem would be, you guys are gonna hate me for saying this, you trade Grayson Allen for a 3-and-D wing, preferably someone who specializes in playing the 4. Right. Then you can move KD to 3, where he likes to be. Book to the 2, his natural position. Tyus to the 1. And then you have more of an argument and more of a legitimate, like, this guy is a solid 4. Well, here's why it makes even more sense for Beal to play the natural 2 coming off the bench there.
On paper, it sounds great.
Yeah, but then you got to figure out who that guy is and if it works.
And I don't know that there's a guy that's making $15.6 million that A, you can trade for legally, financially, making the math work, and B, is good enough again to push Bradley Beal to the bench. Like, and that's my issue with the Ryan Dunn scenario as well. Like, yeah, on paper, having a plus size defensive minded wing and still being able to bring Royce O'Neal off the bench makes sense. It moves Book to the 2. It moves KD to either the 3 or the 4, depending on how big this wing is. That makes sense. But Ryan Dunn is a rookie who we don't even know if he can shoot. And I know you're saying not right away, but he's going to have to really he's going to have to be looking like a rookie of the year candidate for you to realistically say, yes, we're benching you, Bradley Beal, for our rookie Ryan Dunn out of Virginia.
My thing though is, when you look at this lineup, offense will not be the problem. With Mike Budenholzer, an offensive coach that is going to get them moving and playing in the way that Booker and KD talked about last season. I think the massive flaw is going to be, can this group stop people? Is it a complete and utter track meet at the start of these games that potentially puts you at a disadvantage? Because I don't have huge hopes that Tyus Jones is going to be a defensive beast. That's not why you brought him in.
Right.
Bradley Beal can defend. We saw it in the playoffs, but not, it's not another worldly defensive stopper. Book is Book. I think he'll be better this year. KD is good, and we know Nurk's limitations. So, like, to me, it's okay. Are you just in complete, we're going to outscore you mode with that first group? And then do you have enough on the second unit to keep up the offensive pace? Or are you hoping that group becomes a little bit more defensive minded? Or are we just going, screw it, we're going back to the 7 seconds or less days. We're going to be in a track meet and we're going to put up 130, and you're going to have to put up 132 to beat us.
So a couple of things with that. I think you kind of have to. I mean, last year, right, it came back to bite us in the butt in a very epic way. The whole who's going to guard us kind of comments and conversation. But I think you're going to have to kind of lean into that a little bit.
Yeah.
And then going back to our conversations around shooting more threes, if you can trade out more of those middies for more threes, that will help that situation as well. Because math, 3 is more than 2, right? 101 there.
Yeah.
So I think, and with Tyus Jones too, I think you could maybe push the pace a little bit more.
My biggest
I don't think defense is going to be what you're hanging your hat on.
No, I don't think so. But we've talked about it. You need it to be a top 15 defense in all reality to actually probably have a chance at a championship, because we've seen it here in Phoenix. Speed kills, but what it kills is usually your chance at a championship, right? It's a high octane offense can only take you so far if there's not a defense to go with it. And that's my fear. But obviously, you're hoping on a rookie to be that, a guy in Josh Okogie who hasn't shot well enough to warrant time on the court. So I get that's a flaw, but that's still where I think eventually you might have to address, and where Bradley Beal winds up on the bench.
It's just not happening, guys.
I
They're
mean,
not
it's
bringing
not.
Bradley Beal off the bench. Like, I don't even, I don't,
Well-
I understand you want balance. I understand you want defense, but like the problem here that is going to arise with the defensive end is not because Bradley Beal is still in the line. It's because you went out and got a 6'1" point guard. Like, that is the issue here. So why are we talking about benching your third best player instead of the guy who's coming in and now is creating the defensive problems?
Because you've guaranteed that guy a starting spot, and you don't screw
Right,
with
but he's on a vet
roster.
minimum deal. You guaranteed Bradley Beal a starting spot when he agreed to waive his no trade clause to come here. You're not going to suddenly turn around and say, "Here, Brad, be our sixth man." It's just not
because
happening.
Of the money? I mean, is that
Because of the money?
maybe-
Because he's Bradley Beal? Because you're
Okay.
not benching him for a rookie or for Grayson Allen or for Josh
Do
Okogie
you have that
or
Do
anybody?
you have that graphic? I'm just going to go here. All
Oh,
right.
no.
You're playing into the sunken cost fallacy, the phenomenon where a person is reluctant to abandon a strategy or course of action because they've invested heavily in it, even when it's clear that abandonment would be more beneficial.
I
not saying
don't see a photo credit for Merriam-Webster on this one. You made a whole photo graphic for this?
Look, to me,
So-
this is the sunken cost fallacy. I don't care if Bradley Beal made $1 billion. Doesn't matter what I'm paying him. I'm paying him that regardless. I've got to make the decision that puts me in the best situation.
And it's starting your third best
But,
player.
well, I told you at the moment, yes, that's where it's at.
Yes.
But if Ryan Dunn or you trade for a defensive option, I no longer think that that's the case.
Oh my God.
If you trade,
Ryan Dunn's not.
I understand
Ryan
that.
Dunn is not starting over Bradley Beal. I'm sorry to burst your guys' bubble. It's not happening. You're not, like, if you trade for a defensive-minded wing, if you say that, you better be able to tell me who you can trade for, you can actually realistically trade for, and who would be worth benching Bradley Beal. Unless you can do that, I don't really want to hear these arguments because you don't have anybody specific in mind that you can realistically get. We're playing with fantasy names that we don't even
I
have
also think,
access
though,
to.
throughout the season, though, that type of stuff changes as
Oh,
well.
it does. It
Based
definitely
on
does.
what teams are doing and how their seasons have gone, other guys become available. So in this exact moment, no, there is not anybody that I would be like 100% that guy. I'm saying if the door is open during the regular season that somebody does happen to become available who fits that bill, then yes, you can have the conversation at that point as to why it might be more beneficial for the Suns to move Bradley Beal to the bench. But to start the season, I don't think that Bradley Beal should come off the bench. Like, I just don't. But I do understand your point of if that person becomes available, then you have to have those conversations maybe.
Well, and the thing is, you recruited Tyus Jones. You promised him a starting spot. Going back on that, I think hurts you more in free agency and different things than if you go to Brad and go, we feel like this is what the team needs. Can you help us
I disagree.
in this situation? Because you promised a guy something, went very public with it, and then totally would change your mind because you want to keep those three. At that point, don't sign Tyus Jones if that's the thing there.
But that's I understand what you're saying, that the Tyus Jones aspect was more public, but like Bradley Beal waived a no trade clause to come here. He was not doing that if the implication was, we'll see how the first year goes and maybe next year we'll move you to the bench. And I know he's already here, so there's nothing he can do about it now. But it's not even about the salary for me. It's about the fact that, like, he's your third best player. Why are we trying to bench our third best player and get worse with our starting lineup just to, in the sake of being more well balanced? Like, I understand you need to have a top half of the league offense. They had that last year. And I know the construction is different. Tyus Jones is going to present some challenges in terms of the defensive end holding up to be, I think they were 13th in defensive rating last year. The problem last year was they didn't have the elite offense to make up for having a kind of middle of the pack defense. I think that that's the goal this year. If you're shooting more threes, if you're putting Beal, Booker, and KD in spots where they can attack instead of have to worry about the playmaking, like, that's what these moves were all about, was pushing you towards an elite offense. So yes, there are still going to be the defensive concerns. No, I don't have a good answer for you for how Bradley Beal is going to guard twos and Devin Booker is going to guard threes and Tyus Jones is going to hold up at the point of attack. That's not my job. That's Mike Budenholzer's job. But my thing is, are you getting better by taking out a guy who put up 18, 5, and 4 on 53, 43, 83 shooting splits last year and replacing him with either Grayson Allen, who's the same size and didn't put up those numbers, Royce O'Neal, who's slightly bigger and very streaky, or Ryan Dunn, who's a rookie that we don't even know if he can shoot yet?
All
Lindsay,
right,
is
so
this where you go on the other side?
yes,
Okay.
I have questions about these numbers that you did just bring up, Gerald.
Sure.
But first, a quick break so we could all catch our breath. And I'll tell you guys about our friends over at Gila River Resorts and Casinos. At Gila River Resorts and Casinos, no one does it better. They've got 4 locations across the valley, and they've got over 4,500 slots and live table games. They also have amazing sports books and phenomenal food. From upscale to approachable, you can find exactly what you are looking for from a selection of dining options at Gila River Resorts and Casinos. And of course, you can come hang out with us this upcoming Suns seasons, because we're going to be having watch parties out there multiple times throughout the year. So be sure to stay tuned and keep an eye out for the information on how you can come hang out with us at Gila River Resorts and Casinos. P.S. It's gophnx.com on the events tab. Plus, we'll tell you here. But no one does it better than our friends over at Gila River Resorts and Casinos, with an unprecedented level of entertainment and excitement. You do you at Gila River Resorts and Casinos. Visit playatgila.com for more information.
Look, it's never ordinary here on the program when we get Gerald all riled up. That's half the fun in it. And it's never ordinary with our friends over at Bet365. They've got 90 million worldwide users. And when you got that many, you got to trust that they're the best in the business. They created live in-game betting. So if you enjoy doing that, you got to thank our friends at Bet365. But that's not the only thing that they've pioneered. Early payouts. You want to bet a team to win in the NBA? If they go up 20 points, you're going to win your bet. No matter if they lose the game, no matter what point they go up 20 points, you're going to win that. Or your parlay, if that's one of the legs in your parlay, you'll win that leg. Right now, if you sign up, we got 2 offers for you. Your bet and get offer, where you place a bet of $5 or more and get $200 off. Or get 200 in bonus bets, or your first bet safety net offer by placing a bet up to 1,000 and your qualifying bet loses, you're going to receive a match in bonus bets. It's just that easy. So download the Bet365 app right now. Use that promo code PHNX365 when you sign up. Choose your offer and find out why, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 and over. Physically located in Arizona. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. Text NEXT STEP to 53342 or visit problemgambling.az.gov.
All right. So as Nathan pointed out in the chat, and this is something from your article, Beal was the 3rd highest scoring third player on any team last season, other than Kristaps Porzingis
and CJ McCollum. Yeah.
So my question is, and this is coming from an argument that has been made multiple times about why Bradley Beal should come off the bench. So we saw those numbers from him last year. The argument that people are trying to make is that could raise even higher this season if he were to come off the bench, because him coming off the bench in that natural 2 position that he's played would allow him to just come in and absolutely cook. Your only job is to score. You shoot the ball, you drive, whatever you want to do, that's your job. Do you think that's a possibility if he were to come off the bench? And do you think it could outweigh what he brought as far as like being in the starting unit last year with KD and Book more often?
I feel like that line of reasoning and the reasoning that like you'll be more well-balanced if you bring Beal off the bench, it misses the point that like rotations it's not a hockey rotation in the NBA. You don't just sub 5 in and 5 out. Like you stagger these things. You can still put Beal in those situations where he is anchoring bench heavy lineups, where he gets to play the 2 without Book on the floor, or gets to be, a 2-3 situation with Book without KD on the floor. Like you can still do that. You can literally have Beal with the starters, maximize the firepower of that big 3 to open things up for the Tyus Jones, Jusuf Nurkic pick and roll. You can take Beal out around the 6 or 7 minute mark, and you can put him back in at the start of second quarters when Book takes his rest, and you can put him out there with bench heavy lineups, whether it's Tyus Jones or Monte Morris running the show. And that's already an upgrade from what you had to do last year, because even though the minute structure there is similar, You're putting him out there this time with a traditional point guard, which is what everyone wanted. We wanted Beal to not have to run the point because he was pigeonholed into doing things that weren't necessarily in his wheelhouse, or made him a little uncomfortable, made him struggle with, okay, when do I be aggressive as a scorer? When do I be aggressive as a playmaker? You're taking that off the table because you now have a point guard and a backup point guard like everyone wanted. So you can still empower him with those bench heavy lineups. I don't understand why you have to take him out of the game to start games in order to do that. You can still stagger them.
Why not start with a more balanced lineup there? So you put yourself in a position where, okay, we've got some defense, we've got enough offense with these two guys. Then you bring Brad off the bench, still with a Devin or a Kevin and a Monte or a Tyus, and he can have more of an opportunity to go out there and cook in a way like Lindsay's talking about that he was more familiar with. And then you can still close games with the three of them if you decide to go that route. I think sometimes we get hung up on the thought of, starters and that diminishes a role. But when I was looking at it, right, you talk about Beal's stat line, 18.2 points, 4.4 rebounds, 5 assists, right? Mm-hmm. You look at 6 men of the year over the lifetime of the award, 2021-22, Tyler Hero, 20.7 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists in almost as many minutes. Beal had 33 minutes a game, and Tyler Hero was at 32.6 minutes. Lou Williams in 2018-19 averaged 20 points, 5.4 assists, 3 rebounds in 26.6 minutes. And then our own Eddie Johnson in 88-89 had 21.5 points, 4.4 rebounds, 2.3 assists in 30 minutes. Like, I think you can still be the guy and maybe even be more of the Bradley Beal that you had coming off the bench. Like, I think there's a stigma to that doesn't necessarily need to be there, because he can do just as much, if not more, because you're putting him in a position to do that.
I think if you're looking at the modern NBA, and I appreciate what you're saying, because there was a time when the Oklahoma City Thunder were bringing their third best player off the bench, James Harden, and he was absolutely wreaking havoc in that role. But James Harden had a very specific skill set in that he was a point guard in a shooting guard's body, and they needed that playmaking coming off the bench. And also that was over 10 years ago now. And we saw what happened when he went to the Houston Rockets. We saw that as a 6-man role, that was probably holding him back. Moving forward in OKC, he probably would have needed to be a starter because he is an actual star. Bradley Beal is a star. And whether you still believe he's a superstar or not, bringing him off the bench and minimizing his minutes with your best players doesn't help you. Like, it doesn't balance things out. You're saying, yes, you can, empower him coming off the bench. You can still do that only with the best players. Like, the whole object, like, if we're looking at minutes at the end of a game, like you're saying, okay, starting doesn't matter. It's who finishes or whatever you want to call it. If you're looking at the minute totals for each game, Bradley Beal should probably be third on that list, correct?
Depending on,
should anybody be playing more minutes than Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal?
Depending on what Tyus Jones is doing to run the offense, I think you could make an argument that they should be close to each other.
Tyus has only played 29 minutes per game. That was a career high last year. So he's not going to be some guy that's playing 35, 36 minutes, most likely.
I think you could make the argument that Bradley Beal maybe shouldn't be playing that many minutes with the injury.
From a health perspective as well. That was an argument that people were throwing out as to why he should come off the bench too, is because you can limit some of his minutes, maybe ease a little bit of the wear and tear on his body throughout the season.
Guys, Beal is not that old yet.
I know, I agree, but he is injury prone, and if there is a way to help,
but the injury
not guaranteed that any of this would actually help, because a lot of his injuries were fluke injuries last year too.
Right, that's my thing.
So you really can't guarantee that even if you limited his minutes that it would help in any real way.
Going back to my point, if the goal in basketball is to have your best players on the court more often than the lesser players, Bradley Beal should be third on that list. So why are we bringing him off the bench only to boost his playing time throughout the game when you can just put your best players on the court for more time to start the game, and you can stagger him with the bench and still accomplish that goal without pissing off your third best player and a $50 million guy?
And to bring this full circle with the question being like, okay, Brad, go cook. Does it only be that? Can it only be that with the second unit? David in the chat brought up a good point that said, I would argue that that's his job now that we have a true point guard. So regardless if he's with the starters or the second unit, you have a point guard for both of them now. So you could make the argument that Brad's job is to go cook because he's not likely going to be having as much of that playmaking responsibility he saw last year.
But my fear, and it's
so he might be able to do it no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways though, now the ball's not in his hands, right? It's in Tyus's hands to run it. Katie and Devin are first options.
Yes.
Tyus has the ball in his hands, so if there's a play to be made, scoring, he's going to do that. In some ways, does Brad become 3.5 in that? Like, and is that utilizing your third best star in the best way too? Because it starts to remind me, and obviously these were guys of lesser talent. I don't mean same, but remember Goran, IT, and Bledsoe trying to figure out how do all three of us have an opportunity to actually do what we do? And I get it. They were all exactly the same position. But you could argue after last year, Beal, Booker, and Tyus Jones to an extent play similar positions in terms of they've all, those two were ball handling last year. Book and Beal definitely do have a lot of overlapping skill sets. So then are you optimizing Bradley Beal in those situations in a starting lineup? Which makes me wonder, because if he's just standing in a corner or moving but not getting the rock, is he going to be happy about that too?
I get your point, and I do agree with you that it's going to be a challenge for Mike Budenholzer to figure out how to utilize Bradley Beal best when he's with the starters versus when he's the one or the two star on the floor, because it can't just be spot up in the corner and we're going to take advantage of your gravity. But I do think the Suns didn't nearly tap into his off-ball cutting enough last year, and we know that Mike Budenholzer with the motion offense will hopefully be able to tap into that a little bit more. We didn't tap into Bradley Beal's downhill abilities as a driver enough, and I think that's one area where, compared to Book and KD, he can bring something different to the table when he's playing with those starters. So I think there are things that Beal brings to the table that don't necessarily overlap with the other two. And I think that the things that do overlap, like, being able to play make as a secondary playmaker, being able to score off the ball or on the ball, those are things that you want in the modern NBA. You want overlapping skill sets if those are the skills in question. So I feel like you need to have, like, if you have Tyus Jones out there running a pick and roll with Nurk and he's flanked by the big three, if you're running actions for KD and Book where they're screening for each other and Beal's right there one pass away, like, good luck defending that. And I know that Grayson Allen brings some of that Royce O'Neal brings some of the spacing as capable three-point shooters, but it's just different in terms of the gravity that a Bradley Beal has, where you cannot leave him no matter what, because he can attack off the dribble, he can shoot threes, he's going to continue moving without the ball. There's just different things that Bradley Beal brings to the table that make him a star that Grayson, Royce, Ryan Dunn don't necessarily provide.
You've seen a lot of Budenholzer ball, in terms of, do you think there's a way to make the offense work where you're taking advantage of that enough where it's not Tyus and Nurk in a pick and roll, and you hope he's the open guy, or Book and KD are running something and you hope he's the open guy? Because that's my big fear is he is a star quality player. How do you take advantage of it enough where it is to your benefit? And maybe it isn't that staggering and he just accepts, I'm going to get my looks with these guys, but obviously we're going to have to share. And then when I get those staggered minutes, I can kick it into a second gear.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question as well, because when you're playing random, and the hope is that they will play random, you need to have different options that you can turn to, because they are going to be trying to take away Devin Booker primarily and Kevin Durant primarily. If you have Bradley Beal that you can then turn to he's kind of the buster at the end of the day. Like, he will be able to trump whatever they put out there if you have this third guy that does that. It's not about hurt feelings. It's literally about, this is your best lineup. These are your best players. You put them on the court together and they will figure it out. And if they don't, then you stagger your lineup so that each one is empowered in their own way. It is going to be a learning process. And it was my concern. That's why when people keep bringing it up, oh, the Suns got a point guard, Girth, what do you think about that? Like, I understand the benefits of it. It's good to put Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal in more comfortable off-ball situations and make sure they don't have to think as much, don't have to facilitate for others as much, just put them in attack mode. And it is difficult now that 3 of them are off the ball. And guess what? Tyus Jones, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, they're going to have the ball in their hands a lot more than Bradley Beal. That puts him in a tougher spot. I'm not denying that. But you need to be able to figure that out because of how you constructed this team in the first place. So point guard or no point guard, you need to find a more concrete role for Bradley Beal than you did last year. And guess what? Point guard wasn't it. So at least in this way, if you're starting him and then you're staggering him with your bench unit, you can empower him in the way that people have wanted him to be empowered. You just don't have to bring him off the bench to start a game to do it.
I also wonder if, like, on a completely unrelated note, going back to our options right now, right? Like you mentioned, could be Grayson Allen in that spot instead of Beal or Royce O'Neal.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things you talked about with putting Royce O'Neal in there is then, okay, that kind of dries up the forwards on this squad unless you tap into, you've got Bol or you've got Ryan Dunn. And we still don't know entirely what Ryan Dunn will be or look like in the NBA. And then with Grayson, if you keep Grayson in that second unit, are you not recreating the same problem to an extent that you are just trying to fix right now in the starting unit with the 3-guard lineup?
Yeah.
It's the exact same type of situation.
Just with a slightly worse player.
And also maybe behind as well in your front court, slightly less there as well.
Yeah.
So it's kind of one of those things where it's like, unless the option is put Grayson Allen in there for Bradley Beal, which you can totally make the argument for that if you want. But Royce O'Neal, then you recreate the same problem. It's maybe a little lesser on the totem pole, but still essentially the same situation.
So now all we've accomplished is get me concerned about this lineup may have more holes in it than we thought. There's some flaws.
Well, no, because I think we always knew that we were a little bit short when it came to the forwards on this squad.
Right.
We always
in height
knew.
And in terms
we
of
knew wing
literally.
depth. We knew size and wing depth would be problems.
That was still something that hadn't been fully figured out this offseason. But we agreed that what they did figure out as far as plugging some of the holes was a positive still.
Mm-hmm.
And when you are a second apron team, there are only so many holes you're able to fill each offseason because you got no money to work with.
Yeah.
And we got lucky with Tyus Jones.
Yeah.
Like we honestly did. It might have been a little bit of the excitement, whatever. They sold the Suns to Tyus, don't get me wrong, but we also got lucky.
Okay, I may have stumbled into another concern inadvertently when I brought up the 3-point guard thing. Because you know how they got Isaiah Thomas?
On a bargain
because
trade.
he was undervalued. They did a sign and trade and they got him super cheap. And they're like, the analytics say that based on what we paid for him, this guy's going to be unbelievable with this. I sat in meetings. They legit told us this. The front office did. Their analytics people. Right. And then we saw gross miscalculation in terms of, oh crap, the vibes actually matter. Yeah. Right. So now I'm like, hopefully you didn't find yourself in a similar position there.
I get your concern. I do think it's different because all 3 of those guys needed the ball in their hands to be effective. And as point guards, I don't think that's necessarily true for Beal, Booker, and Durant. I think all of them are used to having the ball in their hands, but I think Book, we've seen him thrive for years in the Olympics recently off the ball. We know Kevin Durant doesn't need the ball in his hands to be Kevin Durant. Bradley Beal is the one that has the biggest question because he's lower on the totem pole for those compared to those 2. And he's a guy that they're going to have to figure out how to use him effectively. I just don't think that using him effectively is sitting him for 6 minutes and then bringing him in. Okay,
a couple things from the chat. That Mike from Mesa also pointed out Royce O'Neal is super streaky. So even if it was Royce O'Neal that we put in the starting lineup, there'd be a couple weeks or a month there that we're like, this is the best thing ever. And then maybe the next month or a couple of weeks, we're like, what are we doing?
Oh, no. Yeah.
No. And I don't want that roller coaster. We had enough roller coaster last year. I don't want it again this year.
Yeah.
No shade to Royce because I think he's gonna be better than what we got from him last year with a full season. But still,
let's be fair. We're probably going to get an opportunity to see what a starting lineup without Bradley Beal looks like too, because the odds just based on the number of games he's missed over the last handful of years, it's going to happen at some point. So that's where I think it might get interesting if something pops, well, in terms of a lineup, a starting lineup that, well, he's potentially out injured, then do those questions start? Because again, I think it makes sense to start him to start the year, but does something else give at some point?
Yeah. All right. Couple super chats here as well. Thank you guys for sending them in. Psycho Blue sent us one and said, benching Beal would solve the money issue because he'd demand a trade. Sure, we'd be a toxic market again, but ...
Yeah, like I mean, even if he demanded a trade, it's tough to see a team trading for $50 million Bradley Beal at this point.
Yeah,
to be honest.
But I guess if you were trying to push him out, that's one way potentially to go about it, I suppose.
Yeah, I don't know if I see that happening.
I see you no trade clause, and I'll see you up with a benching. How about that?
If I was Bradley Beal, I'd be like, all right, bet.
We want to be
Run me my money.
We want to be out of our toxic era.
Run me my money. All right. Altex sent us one and said, y'all already know how I feel about my boy Beal, so I will not take any of this. All caps, quit it. I'm confident he'll ball out this season. I do think that Bradley Beal is going to have a better season this year. I think there was a lot of factors last season that contributed to not only him kind of I don't want to say struggling, but for lack of a better word, struggling, but the team as a whole, struggling as well.
Struggling to find himself. Look,
yes.
No matter if he starts or he comes off the bench, I still think the Beal-assance is on, and he's going to be a huge part of why they win and how they win this year. He's that important. I think it's just about how do you get him cooking? How do you get him going? How do you make sure that you're optimizing what you get out of him?
Yeah.
Some guy named Justin sent us a super chat as well. Thank you. They said, like it or wave your claws, Mr. Glass.
Wait, we got Anthony Davis on the team?
Oh, no.
Anthony Davis 2.0, maybe?
No, Mr. Glass is Anthony Davis.
I know.
I will not take this slander.
All right. And then we also put a poll in the chat and said, what would you do with Bradley Beal? And the first answer is start him. The second answer is bring him off the bench. 59% say start him. 40% say bring him off the bench. That is so
much closer than it should be, guys. Jesus.
I'm that good of an arguer. Thank you to the 40%ers who know what you're talking about. I mean, I'm glad to have you here. We'll get our tinfoil hats. We'll do this together.
Any final additional pieces of argument that you would like to present?
No, all hope is lost. The coalition for reason is extremely weak.
It's not, because none of us get to make any deciding factors when it comes to this team. So you're okay, Gerald.
Yeah. Yet. Well, no.
Never. We're not having it. Espo, you got any other pieces you want to throw into the fire here?
No, I think this was a fun thought experiment.
I think it was, yeah. Honestly, and it's been all over. And you can continue to have whatever opinion you'd like to have. At the end of the day, it's Coach Bud who gets to make the final decision. And we'll find out here in, 35 days? Something like that?
Do you have a calendar on your wrist?
I just love, raising his blood pressure.
Just a little bit? Yeah, keep him on his toes.
It's a daily exercise.
All right, we've got more for you on the other side. But first, a quick break. To remind you that if you need gas, if you need snacks, if you need good vibes, Circle K is your spot. They have a free membership program called the Inner Circle, and it's super easy to sign up. All you need is your email and phone number to be fully enrolled, and then after that, all you need is your phone number to get hooked up with all the deals, like saving 25 cents per gallon on your first 5 fill-ups. You save 3 cents per gallon every single day. And there are also tons of other member exclusive deals and discounts that you can find when you are a part of the Inner Circle, like your first 5 Polar Pops for free. Or right now, Inner Circle members can also get any size Polar Pop or Froster for just 79 cents. And of course, there's even more specials and deals that you will find in the app. So be sure to join Inner Circle for free by downloading the Circle K app today. Terms and conditions apply at participating locations. Visit CircleK.com for details.
Oh, my fellow 40%ers, are you looking for some nice hats? Because I got some nice hats for you. Our friends at Branded Bills, they've sent us a new box today. filled with, I'm not an ASU fan, but filled with some really, really gorgeous ASU hats.
They make nice hats.
To the point where I was like, I might actually wear one of these things.
There you go.
And I started questioning my own sanity at that point.
Love it.
Because it's ASU. But they have some great U of A hats. They've got some unbelievable, hats that are just the Arizona State flag.
Hey, look at
this.
that one.
Look at that. That is the
Beautiful.
ASU State, Arizona State flag there. I love it. It's fantastic. You can get some great ones. We're actually going to have some PHNX branded ones.
Let's go.
So I want to tell you about their local company. They're in Mesa. So if you order, the shipping happens really quick too. I do believe they have some tinfoil hats, Johnny. We'll get you hooked up with one of those. Head to brandonbills.com. Use that promo code PHNX for 20% off your first order with our friends at Branded Bills.
I love the color of that logo. Like, that's super dope.
Would you like
Toss
to?
it over here.
I'm gonna hand it. It's pretty
No,
nice.
because brown and black is so in right now.
Hey, that's my hat.
This
so you
is
keep
legit.
your hands off
I don't
it.
wear hats. You're okay. It's safe for you.
Got to get you a beanie.
But that's
Brandon
super.
Bill's
They do
beanie.
have beanies.
There you go.
All right, guys. So I gave you all a homework assignment.
You did?
Okay. Yep. The homework assignment was that you
right.
had to build the best possible Suns all-time lineup using players that share your same first initial. I think I had like 7 or 8 legitimate players to choose from with mine.
Yeah.
Did you choose G or did you choose E?
I chose E because
Okay, you went with
Gerald's G,
Espo.
and I just
Perfect.
thought we'd wind up with the same
That would have been
lineup.
boring if we chose
Yes.
the same 5 out of 9 players.
Although you did have one that I could not match with an E when you're G's. So.
Okay.
You want to start us, Gerald?
Yeah.
I will say this, Gerald. There's one player that if they're not on your team, I'm going to be upset.
Okay. I mean, there's a very limited amount to choose from, and we are going all small here, by the way. I want everyone to be aware of that.
I'm definitely getting
because I could have
creamed in
gone
this
with
one.
Greg Monroe just to have a big, but the man was here for 20 games, and that would have been
Come
rough.
on, I
And
love Moose.
He was so nice, but
He was
no.
so nice.
But
He
no.
was not good.
He was not good here.
I always said that he needed to go into voiceovers because his voice was like
Oh, yeah.
legit.
No, he had a great voice. Obviously, Goran Dragic, we had to have him in there. That's a no-brainer.
Solid.
Gail Goodrich, we got a double G in there
Hall of
because,
Famer.
yeah, he was only here for 2 seasons, but he is a Hall of Famer, and he still put up numbers in the 2 years he was here. Gar Hurd, out of
Why
honor
did I
for the
let you
shot.
have G?
The shot heard around the world. You look at his numbers; they weren't fantastic, but just that moment in Suns history, got to have him in there. My guy Grant Hill, he's definitely in the Grant Hill's got to be in the lineup. There's just no way. He's the reason I drink Sprite. And then Gerald Green to
There
wrap
you
things
go.
up.
Oh,
How
you
could I
had
leave
me.
out a
You had
Gerald
me
on my
worried.
list, especially one with 4 fingers? My guy,
You had me
Gerald
worried,
Green.
Gerald.
So run
That's my
through your
5.
lineup again.
My lineup is Goran Dragic, Gail Goodrich, Gar Hurd, Grant Hill, and Gerald Green. No, we're not getting rebounds. No, we're not getting stops. We are just going to get out and run.
Hey, if it works, it works.
Lindsay, you go ahead and grace us with the
Okay.
poo-poo platter that you,
All
you
right.
have there.
Well, listen, I completely forgot Landry Shamet existed until I already decided what my team was going to be. But
So did
honestly,
he.
I'm not really sure that it would have made that much of a difference.
Okay.
But we're going to roll with Lindsey Hunter.
Oh, Lindsay. Okay.
Yep, we
Oh,
got a Lindsay on the
You
squad.
picked a
Lindsay.
coach to be
Yep.
on your roster.
Sure
All
did.
right.
Yikes.
Floor general. Leandro Barbosa.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Love him.
Mhm.
Luis Scola.
Oh, okay.
Larry Nance. And
Oh.
Lou Amundsen.
Why are you complaining? That's actually
That's
a
not bad.
solid roster.
You got-
I mean, it's okay.
Just wait till you hear what I have to roll
The only
with.
other options that I felt like, so we got Langston Galloway in there, only played for
My
one
boy
season though.
Langston.
Good day to be great.
Landry, like I said, Luke Zeller,
Oh.
Lorenzo
Oh, no.
Brown.
Luke Zeller, best shooter in practice ever, is what I was told.
Damn.
Love that for
Yeah.
him.
I'm a little upset that Landry Shamet didn't make the cut
I,
ultimately.
I
little upset.
thought about it.
You have elite power forward depth though.
I do.
You have Scola.
All of them. They're
That-
just going to be fighting for which one gets that role,
Yeah.
right?
Gerald, they're going to be grabbing so many rebounds against your team.
Oh, I know.
Get
I'm gonna be
stuffed,
bombing so
Gerald.
many threes on their team though.
So I just went, you know what? I'm in Gerald's mindset here.
Yeah.
I went Elliot Perry,
Okay.
Eric Bledsoe,
Mhm.
Eric Gordon,
Yep.
Eddie Johnson,
Oh.
and let's throw Ed Pigney in there just to grab a rebound because nobody else is going.
Okay. That's
I
not a
mean-
bad squad.
It's a terrible squad.
not that bad.
It's not the worst.
At least you have guards and bigs.
Yeah, I got a couple 6 men of the year in there. you
Yeah,
know.
that's not bad.
Eric Bledsoe just looked at the roster and said, "I don't want to be here." And
that'll
Elliot
hurt the depth.
Perry's in a bathtub full of socks.
Okay,
right
so
now,
whose team wins if we had a tournament of our 3 teams? Who comes out on top?
I think Gerald's.
I was gonna say mine, but I didn't want to sound conceited because we are all like 6'6" across the board and or less. So I don't know, Lindsay. I'm sorry, I can't vote for your team with your head coach as your point guard
Why
as well.
not? You know?
Well,
Hey, he
especially that
played.
head coach.
I mean, he played.
He played.
Especially,
He did.
especially that head coach.
Yeah, that was a rough time period for us there.
I mean,
I'm
gonna roll with it.
Triple B's right though. Larry Nance is completely underrated.
He really is.
Like,
Yeah.
All-time underrated guy.
He may be the best any of us have on our list in their Suns days.
Yeah.
Ashley believes in me, so that's all that matters.
Okay.
There you go.
I mean,
that's
and
I
nice.
win.
look, I didn't have many other choices. I think the only other guy that I didn't choose was Earl Barron.
Okay. I was gonna ask if
Yeah.
you had it. I remember Earl Barron.
Yeah, his stats were not memorable,
No,
but the
that's
name
fair.
was.
There weren't any other.
Not really. I mean, there was
near
one
cuts.
guy that played I think half a season and never
Yeah.
heard of and had no real stats to speak of.
E is a tough one.
Yeah.
I'll
He
give
is
you
a
that.
super tough one.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like mine were pretty. Greg Monroe was my toughest cut, just because I was
feel
like,
like
do
you
I
should've
need a
just had him
big?
in there.
What
But
a
who am I-
sentence.
But who am I leaving? Who am I leaving out?
I mean, that's
like
fair.
Better not
Gar
be
Hurd?
leaving out Gerald Green.
No,
I mean, Gar
I would
Hurd's
have to leave
probably-
Gar Hurd out, and that
that-
felt disrespectful just because of the shot heard
The
around the
moment,
world.
yeah.
George King, remember him?
He
Yes.
was so nice though.
George King,
Gabriel
dude.
Ife Lundberg.
I'm pretty sure I
And
have.
George
Hey, that was a
McLeod.
moment right there.
I'm
That
pretty
was
sure I have.
just a few years ago, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
mhm.
Joe did
McLeod
bring
was
up
pretty good.
Eddie House was the
Ooh.
other guy.
Eddie House would have
But
been
I
good.
already had a bunch of 6-0 flamethrowers. So
That's
I was
fair.
like, if I put one more on here, we're just playing street ball with no chance of
Yeah.
actually competing in anything. So.
Yeah. It's fair.
I still think I'm gonna win. So great
Hey,
exercise.
you know
though.
what we could do?
What we have learned is there's not a lot of E's, G's, or L's on
No.
the Suns.
Well, there have been a lot of L's over the years.
There's been.
Oh, burn.
We could put these all in NBA 2K and
And
find
see
out.
which one wins. That'd be
Lindsey
fun.
Hunter starting point guard
I am
NBA
pissed.
2K.
Okay,
Uh-huh.
Aaron brought it up. I'm so mad you didn't put Elliot Kobo on your squad. as
Why?
well.
Why would I put Elliot
He
Kobo?
was in a Drake music video.
Elliot
Great
Kobo
practice
was
guy.
the-
No, Yeah, I could have put together a great practice squad with some of these guys. So.
This is great practice fodder
Oh
for
my
Devin
gosh.
Booker.
All right. Well,
Poor
thank
guy.
you guys for being here with us. We appreciate you. We had to end on a little bit of a
Mhm.
up note since we knew that conversation was a little toxic. if you will.
Unbelievable.
Ashley sitting here going, I get Amari, he gets Alvin Adams.
Facts.
Yeah.
You got a lot.
Yeah.
You
Oh,
got a lot.
Alec Peters.
Alec
Heyo.
Peters.
hey, for that one game,
The
we
only
all
last
were-
game of the season, Alec Peters.
Hey.
We were all Peter fans.
That dude was a
so-
flamethrower against the Mavs.
You
All right,
was.
don't you disrespect my boy.
He was.
Hit
Him
that
and
thumbs up
Mirza
button.
Teletovic, all right?
If you
Yeah.
are here with us on YouTube, rate, review, subscribe wherever you get your podcast. And of course, follow the show on social at PHNX_Suns. And you can also follow me at Lindsay Smith AZ. You can follow Gerald at Gerald Bourget. And you can follow Espo at Espo. Espo, take us home.
We're benching Lindsay till the beginning of October.
Let's
Oi,
go.
oi.
We all silly like the mayor.